Let me just say right up front, if I had known how good the valedictorian speech was going to be, I would have gone first so you could get the best speech second. Good morning to all of you, and thank you, General, for that kind introduction. Let me first say how honored and humbled I am to be with you today in this historic place and in honor of these future leaders of our nation. Let's make no mistake about it, you don't need to be quiet for my speech. I understand this to be a celebration. We are here to celebrate our future. You know, my job in Air Education and Training Command is one where we really graduate thousands and thousands of airmen during the course of a year. And as I was preparing for today's graduation, I've attended many of those graduation ceremonies. And I've heard many speakers, both for me and one myself, over the last 31 years. Now, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I could not clearly remember what any of them had to say. I say almost embarrassed because it's actually embarrassing on the one hand, but on the other not, because it's quite liberating when preparing your speech. All you have to think is, don't worry, General. They will neither remember you or what you had to say. In reality, I've reflected quite a bit on this historic place, especially as you celebrate your 125th birthday. Now, it's not exaggeration to say that this school has really come a long way. You know, from the dutiful charge of the United Methodist Church to prepare the simple objective of men to go on to Randolph-Macon College to today's preparatory skill, still grounded in the values of the United Methodist Church, the character, the spiritual guidance. And the record shows, though, that now you send both men and women to service academies, to Ivy League universities, to many other great educational institutions, based on whatever is the best fit for that student. And something that I don't believe many others can say, certainly not something I've heard. You don't send some of them to higher educational institutions. You send 100% of them to higher education institutions. And I will tell you that you ought to be pretty proud of yourself for that record. Give yourself a round of applause. Now, I mentioned that this is a celebration, and indeed I believe that it is. The first thing, though, that we have to ask ourselves is how these amazing young men and women got here. Now, personally, I happen to believe that that takes an entire village. Now, first in that village are early and good examples at home. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, neighbors, caregivers of all types, uncles and aunts. Perhaps you're out there and perhaps you offered counsel at just the right time. Or better yet, you paid tuition. Or you took a phone call late at night just to say, I know you can do this, even when you really had no clue what they were doing. Or you looked over after you hung up the phone and said, I really hope they can do this. And then you thought, just hang in there. Perhaps, or just that confident smile when they came home. You signaled that you had faith in them. And then without ever speaking a word, you allowed them to continue on. Whatever role you played, I'm convinced that it takes the entire village to get to where we are today. So how about a round of applause for all of those caregivers that got these folks here? You know, another part of success and celebration has got to be the teachers. We have to be mindful to the roles of teachers in today's society. I read that teachers have 2 times to 3 times the impact of any other thing that you might do in school. The building, everything else is second to the impact of teachers. According to a RAND study, if you look at teachers, teachers will impact everything that happens to that student, from how much they will earn, and get the students to who they might marry one day. Teachers have a great impact. Everything to do with success and failure. How about a round of applause for all the teachers that helped them get here? Now, I'm in the Air Force, and in the Air Force, we believe that failure, success, and everything in between must be attributed to leadership. In your case, the incredible success has to be at least in part attributable to the leadership of this great school, including my friend of several assignments and comrade in the profession of arms, General and Miss Wesley, your school president, the board of trustees, the deans, the principals, and everyone else in the supporting staff. This school is obviously well led, and let's finally give them a round of applause. And yes, in case you think I forgot, the main reason that we are here today to celebrate the outstanding accomplishments of the graduating class sitting before us, the class of 2017. Now, the mere fact that you are the class of 2017 is a bit intimidating to those of my generation. This means that most of you must have been born somewhere around 1999 or 2000. Now, that's a little scary if you're standing where I am. You've never lived in a world without texting or had to print out directions to get somewhere. In fact, I think all of you are about 1 year older than Google. You're too young to be included in Generation X or Generation Y. We ran out of alpha characters and we just started calling you millennials. To the graduates, I'd say that those of my generation may at times misunderstand you. And you know, when we misunderstand people, we tend to blame them for those things we simply don't understand. Let me share a little story with you. There were two brothers. Their names were Mark and Michael. They attended Catholic school. Now, there's some truth to this story because I've got two sons, and their names are Mark and Michael, and at the time they did attend Catholic school. Now, these two boys often got in trouble at school. And to be true, that part of the story is true as well. Finally, this school, which was run by the nun, had had enough of these two boys. She said, if you guys keep getting in trouble, I'm going to send you to see the father. The father in this school acted as the principal. So in fact, they did keep getting in trouble, and she did send them to see the father. The father brought them in one at a time, and he decided to scare them straight. He got up real close to Mark, the oldest one, first, and he said, young man, where is God? The boy was a little bit intimidated, and he stepped back. And then the chaplain, he got in front of him again, and he said, I said, where is God? The boy grew so scared that he ran down the hall. His brother had heard all the rumbling and was hiding in the closet. He stuck his head in the closet and said, we're in trouble this time. God is missing, and they swear we did it. This is at times how we treat our new generations, the millennials. We tend to blame them for the ills of the world and sometimes things that we simply don't understand. But nothing, I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. You are a great generation. And based on your choice to be a part of an academy like Randolph-Macon, you have already got a head start in life. And I believe if you hold on to what you've learned here at the academy, especially as it relates to character and virtue, your story, like the story of those that came before you, may very well end well. This morning, I want you to think about how that story might unfold. I want you to mentally leave this great historic place and allow yourself to imagine just for a minute the year 2052. Now, that's a long ways away. It's exactly 35 years into the future. Now, I chose that date selfishly because 35 years ago, May 1982, I was graduating high school. Now, don't panic. I'm not saying that you're going to be gray and bald 35 years from now. That only happened to me and General Wesley. It does not happen to everyone. I do want you to take a mental journey with me to this future land. Just imagine 2052. Where will you be? What will you have done? Will your life reflect the beliefs and training from Randolph-Macon Academy? Now, the math is simple. 35 years is 35 years. Some will have completed at least 4 years of ROTC or finished service academies and be serving as commissioned officers. Others will be doing the very good work of raising families, practicing law or medicine. Given the many options that life can take, it's clearly difficult to say exactly where you will be or what you will be doing. There are, however, I believe, some constants in life that I think we all can expect. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, you may have read about him, captures one of these constants in his poem entitled The Ladder of St. Augustine. Longfellow, in a poetic way, tries to capture the ups and downs of life. Using the analogies of the rungs of the ladder, with each rung he offers prescriptions for moving forward. He warns us that no matter what route we take, life will have some ups and some downs. The question he poses is how just do we handle those ups and downs? He uses many poetic phrases, but the one that I like best, he says, the heights of great men, reached and kept, were not obtained by sudden flight. But they, while their companions slept, went toiling upward through the night. Longfellow proves wiser than most. He shows that understanding that though the journey is unchangeable and filled with faults, flaws, and failures, that we would love to change, even a pile of problems, gives us something we can build on. If out of the ashes of our mistakes, we learn wisdom, and if we use that wisdom to gain some heights, then it can be said that in the long run, those challenges, like rungs on a ladder that you are attempting to grab, may indeed be used to move you up a little higher. That turns out to be good news for us. Said differently by someone far less articulate than Longfellow, challenges produce champions. Obstacles are opportunities. And trials, well, trials, thank God for trials, because they can result in triumphs. I believe this is life's true journey, no matter who you are, and especially those gathered here for graduation today. Before you reach the year 2052, you will undoubtedly face challenges no matter what route you take. It is not a question of if, but rather a matter of when. When it happens, will your challenges produce champions? Will you see obstacles as opportunities? And can your trials result in triumphs? In meeting all of those points, will you be able to reflect on what you've learned at Randolph-Macon Academy? Will you be able to become where we end up, the heights of great men? Let me offer one example from one of your alumni. In 1956, this school was about 64 years old. Walt Boomer walked across the stage at Randolph-Macon Academy. I'm told he went by Boomer at the time. Now that's just for the fellow alumni. To me, his first name is Sir, his middle name is Sir, and his last name is Sir. Because General Walt Boomer, a four-star Marine general, has led men in combat. 11 years after his graduation, Captain Boomer found himself in Vietnam, leading a company of the 2nd Battalion. In '67, he was leading a search and clear operation, crossing a small stream, when his company came under heavy small arms and automatic weapons fire from an enemy that he could not really see. Captain Boomer, not having a full visual, had a decision to make on behalf of the Marines he was charged to lead. He could have chosen to retreat. No one would have blamed him for that. That was an acceptable course of action. He could have sent one of his Marines forward to investigate from a closer vantage point. We would not have blamed him for that. He was the leader and needed to protect himself. He did none of those things. Rather, he chose to move toward the sound of the guns. He advanced the remainder of his company through that dense jungle until they were in a position to suppress the enemy fire. The fighting was at close range and very intense. This young company commander, your alumni, took command in addition to artillery and airstrikes and called in. In the end, he routed Viet Cong from his position. For his bravery and leadership, Captain Boomer earned the prestigious Silver Star. General Boomer, many years later, would lead all Marines as the United States ousted the late Saddam Hussein out of neighboring Kuwait in Operation Desert Storm. I think it is fair to say that your fellow alumni, with his Randolph-Macon Academy training, when faced with challenges, he produced champions. When others saw obstacles, he saw opportunities. What seemed to be trials resulted in triumphs. How will you deal with life's ups and downs? Are you willing, if necessary, to go toiling upward through the night? Will you fight when the chips are down and seemingly against you? I know that you will. Now, to be fair, not all examples of dealing with life's obstacles are as serious as war. Some are far more practical and fun, like high school football. Think back with me for a minute. It was an away game. St. Anne's Belfield was the opponent. As the game entered the last few minutes, it didn't look good for Randolph-Macon. In fact, you were down by 9 points. You were still holding your heads up high. You thought maybe, just maybe, you could win. Then somehow, you drove down the field. You scored a touchdown to bring the score within 2 points. You then took a risk, and somebody in the huddle said, let's go for it all. You executed a near-perfect onside kick, and you recovered it, and that almost never happens. You went down the field to score another touchdown and a 2-point conversion. All of this happened with less than 3 minutes of the game left. And don't you know Randolph-Macon won that day, 41-35. Do you remember that day? Do you remember the choices not to give up? Do you remember the fighting spirit? Do you remember the perseverance? Do you remember the resilience? Do you remember the teamwork? I'll bet seniors Alex Blair remembers. Corbin Ruck, Jeffrey Collins, and Alex Dungose. They were crucial to the victory. They didn't give up. They had that same fighting spirit as General Boomer had. Don't ever lose your fighting spirit. And so the second question as we continue down this mental journey is really about that 35 years I mentioned. Seems like a lot of time from where you sit. From where I sit, it doesn't seem like so long. I would offer that this academy, our Air Force, and the graduates that we honor have something in common that indicates how we might spend some of that time. We're all to some degree committed to serving something greater than ourselves. Now that's a humbling proposition in a time when service to our nation and to our community is in such great need. I submit to you that there are few things greater than the feeling you get when you have spent time in service for your fellow man. Let me tell you one more quick story. Back in 2010, a massive earthquake struck near Port-au-Prince in Haiti. On that night, airmen across a spectrum of specialties received the call for help. It was a valid call for the unique skills found in the United States Air Force. Now, some provided support from home while thousands boarded aircraft headed to Haiti. I would submit that they were on their way to provide life-saving service to people they had never met. When they arrived, the Haitian infrastructure was devastated. Over 1 million people had been displaced from their homes. Thousands of others were left in need of food, water, and medical care. Roads, bridges, and seaports were destroyed, and there was no way initially to reach them by land or by sea. But your Air Force could reach them. We could deliver hope from the air, and that's exactly what happened. Rescue teams were brought in on Air Force planes. These were not big planes landing empty. They were full of hope in the form of trained medics who would immediately care for the wounded, security to ensure the country's stability, engineers to repair the roadways, lawyers to make determinations on children who were suddenly left homeless. Other support personnel provided food and water and supplies, everything needed to survive. Airdrop was not common, but we still used it. Over 700 bundles of food and water were dropped out of C-17s and C-130s, each drop capable of feeding 4,000 people for 24 hours. Now think about that for a good day's work. Now imagine yourself, the year 2052, strapped into the back of that C-17 as it returned from Haiti, or better yet, piloting that C-17, bringing that large aircraft home after that life-saving humanitarian mission. Because of you, families would be reunited, infants would have life-saving care, and an entire country would have been given a second chance at survival. I could repeat similar Air Force stories around Haiti and Afghanistan, Iraq, Chile, a volcano in Iceland, an oil spill in the Gulf, a hurricane called Katrina, Manas, Kazakhstan. I could repeat many stories like that. But in all cases, someone had to answer the call, or as it said in the book of Isaiah, who will go for them? Who will go for them? It's me, O Lord, send me. Send me. Finally, as you imagine 2052, you might see the people that I'm describing as superhuman. You may wonder, how could I be that leader that overcomes life's obstacles, or that servant that spends life in service to others? I understand these feelings, and I will confess that I have had them myself, especially as I sat in your chair 35 years ago. Would I be up for the call for service? In thinking of this question, I might mention that I took the liberty of looking over the records that you have. From what I can tell, you have very little to worry about. You have leaders like Stephen, your class vice president. He encountered his first leadership challenge at the beginning of the year when he overheard his classmates complaining about things in school. He stepped in and challenged them to step forward and make a difference. Don't just sit around and complain. The following month, Stephen was elected as his class vice president and has finished this year as one of the senior leaders of his class. I believe Steve and everybody that voted for him is ready to lead. Or Nimi, who was a part of the Teens Opposing Poverty group that went to Washington, D.C. to give food and clothing to the homeless people. What about a group made of teens that's called Teens Opposing Poverty? I believe Nimi is ready to lead. And so are the rest of you. Your class represents 9 states, 5 countries, 2 postgraduate students, 7 Falcon Scholars, people headed to the Air Force Academy, Norwich, Citadel, full ROTC scholarships with the Army and the United States Air Force. Make no mistake about it. The class of 2017 is ready to lead, and in fact, I'm confident that you will, and the nation will be the better for it. There is no achievement without sacrifice, so be ready to go climbing through the night. And there is no feeling or finances better than when you get for serving something greater than yourself. Congratulations, class 2017. I salute each and every one of you. God bless you and Godspeed.